Commissioner Rob, there's a lot of things that are happening right now in Miami-Dade, and I don't think people are aware of how much change is going to happen, specifically with the new industry that's starting to pop up here, and it's the space industry, right? So
Absolutely.
we've spoken a little bit about it before, and I wanted to get your opinion and your feedback because you know more, right? You're behind the scenes navigating this. What is going on with the space industry coming over here to South Florida, and then with Homestead becoming a spaceport? What does that mean for Miami-Dade in general?
Okay, I don't know if you're ready because you just opened Pandora's box. This is going to cover like a lot of different things, right?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Look, I happen to believe space technology is the future of humankind. We're never going to leave the information age, and I think AI is always going to be relevant. But the future of innovation is in space tech. Now, that's really important. Why is it important? I'm sure that you've heard, there's been initiatives to bring tech to Miami, right? Let's bring Silicon Valley to Miami. Dude, that's not going to happen. The reason that's not going to happen is because we don't have a Stanford, we don't have an MIT, right? You need a pipeline in order for that to happen, right? Silicon Valley happened naturally because of the schools that were in the area and because of the buzz and the feel and the vibe, right? The reason I'm saying this is because if we know that space technology is the future, why would we try to bring Silicon Valley when we could create the next Silicon Valley? What am I getting at? You're familiar with Miami Executive Airport, right? Mm-hmm. I think Miami Executive Airport is an underutilized airport. As a matter of fact, you've never seen the amount of construction and initiatives that have been happening in Miami Executive Airport like you've seen them in the last 2 years that I've been here. It's been underutilized. It's been a graveyard for so long. We're changing that. Why? Or how? Let's start with how. Are you familiar with George T. Baker?
Yes.
Okay, I went to George T. Baker, and for those that don't know, George T. Baker is a school that you can go to in Miami-Dade County. The school, Miami-Dade County Public Schools, pays for it. Your kids can go there in 9th grade. By the time they graduate in 12th grade, they have an airframe and power plant license, which means that they can be airplane mechanics, right? From there, you can go into piloting, engineering, etc. But the most beautiful thing about it is you're an airframe and power plant mechanic that can work on airplanes and you have zero student loan debt. And you're making anywhere between $70,000 to $90,000 a year starting as an AMP. We happen to have a drone manufacturing company right here in West Kendall that is leading in the technology push for new innovation in drones. They hire AMPs. So what am I doing with Miami Executive Airport, right? I'm bringing a George T. Baker to Miami Executive Airport. For what? To create that pipeline. As a matter of fact, we're getting ready to build the school now. As soon as I got in, I met with the superintendent, with the school board. They've all been super receptive. That's the future of education. Not everybody's going to be a lawyer and doctor, right? We need the return of the middle class. I'm also bringing the BRITS program. BRITS is very similar for young adults, right? You go into this school, it's a technical school. You can come out as an AMP. You can go into engineering. You can go into piloting. I'm also expanding Miami-Dade College in that airport, and they're going to be teaching piloting. By the way, you can get a pilot's license at 17 years old before you graduate high school. Did you know that?
No.
So they're going to be teaching piloting, and all of this is during high school, right? They're working in conjunction with Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Piloting, air traffic control, A&P, and aeronautical engineering, all of these things. Now, you would ask, why are we concentrating in education? Because remember, it's all about that pipeline and that vibe. I want to create the pipeline to attract these big space companies to come here. Why? I'm sure you've been following Donald Trump and tariffs, right? Here's what's going to happen with the tariffs, whether people want to admit it or not. What's going to happen with the tariffs is manufacturing is going to come back to the United States of America. As a matter of fact, we've already been contacted by many Canadian companies and international companies that want to come to Miami because who doesn't want to live in Miami, man? This is the greatest place in the world, right? So because we understand that manufacturing is going to come to Miami, and to the United States, and because we want it to come to Miami, we need to take the steps to create that pipeline to make it easy for these companies to say, I want to go there, right? Now, that brings another initiative into the mix because the governor has been prioritizing space innovation in Florida, so much so that he created something called Space Florida. Now, Space Florida is basically an initiative to try to figure out how we can bring space companies down to Florida, right? If you create a spaceport, which we've already designated Homestead Air Force Base as a spaceport, and we're designating Miami Executive Airport as a spaceport. Being designated as a spaceport does not mean that you're going to have launches. What it means is that you have a front row seat if you're doing anything that has to do with space or anything that has to do with aerospace and connects with space. Whatever investment you make in a spaceport designation, you can get up to a 50% reimbursement from the state. Not only that, I just got back from Tallahassee. Very good friend of mine, Senator Jay Collins, just passed a bill that's going to give tremendous tax incentives to anybody that wants to do aerospace and engineering. I'm talking about, production right here in Florida, the state of Florida. Now, also, Senator Ashley Moody, who's a dear friend, Senator Rick Scott, Congressman Byron Donalds, Congressman Mauro Diaz-Balart in D.C., along with Congressman Carlos Jimenez, are doing a great push to bring NASA to Central Florida. And the governor has been, paving the way to make sure that this is viable. So regardless of whether NASA comes or not, the bill has already been made and it's cooked, right? They're going to vote on this. And it's a big possibility that NASA comes to Central Florida. Regardless, SpaceX has already said that they have an interest in going into Central Florida. What I'm talking about is right here in West Kendall, right here in Miami-Dade County, creating the pipeline to make it easy for manufacturing to come. And we can actually build the parts, build the engines, and construct the production necessary to send it to Central Florida. Now, right where Miami Executive Airport is, you have a lot of land out there that's in the urban expansion area. And regardless, around that airport, you need to bring jobs to this side of Miami-Dade County in order to alleviate traffic. Because every day, people live in West Kendall, greatest place to live, but there's nothing to do and nowhere to work. So you're in a car every day going towards Coral Gables, going towards downtown to work. If we bring that manufacturing down here to West Kendall, we create work nodes. We create an aerospace ecosystem, not to launch rockets, but for space technology, aerospace technology, drone technology. And knowing that a lot of defense companies want to be near Homestead Air Force Base, we're creating the pipeline of the next generation of young people that are going to go into space. Does that make sense?
So you're telling me that Tamiami Airport is going to have a massive explosion of growth because of the space industry and the potential of the airport being reclassified as a space territory, right?
Yes.
So how many jobs do you think that's going to bring there? And I guess
thousands.
And thousands of jobs, that's amazing.
And the cool thing is, these are not $17 an hour job, okay? This is $90,000, $100,000, $200,000 jobs, right? And we're talking everything from manufacturing, where you're doing it with a technical degree. You don't have to go to college to do this. And there's nothing wrong with college, right? Because it's engineering jobs. As a matter of fact, in South Carolina, Boeing has already done this, right? They created like an aerospace ecosystem. What I'm talking about is creating that ecosystem, knowing that the tariffs are going to force a lot of these companies to have to come to the United States, and telling them what better place to do it than right here, the center of the universe, Miami-Dade County, the New York.
So do you think that Kendall, with this growth, especially West Kendall, has the potential of becoming like its own city to manage itself? Or
Man, you know what? Like, I don't think it needs to become a city, bro. Like, I think, because look, with making it a city comes, issues. And those issues are more taxes. I don't think anybody can afford taxes right now, right? And I think that right now we need to keep as much money in the people's pockets as possible. That needs to be the goal. But we need to boost the economy. How do you boost the economy? Bring high-paying jobs into the region. Bring more restaurants. Bring more things to do and places to work into this area, and allow folks to keep money in their pockets.
Is it feasible to even bring the Metro Rail and extend it all the way out that far west?
Okay, you know what? Talking about rail, right? The beautiful thing about bringing that type of manufacturing and production to West Kendall, right, is that we have the CSX lines. Have you heard of the CSX lines?
I've heard of it.
And those lines connect all the way up to where Central Florida is. See what I'm saying? So it would make the production easy. Now, talking about the rail, look, man, public transportation is really, really important, and we need to be able to fix that. We're never going to be able to fix public transportation until we're able to issue connectivity. We need connectivity, right? I'm the only commissioner that has taken a bus from 147th and 8th Street, which is, right at the district, all the way to downtown. They knew I was a county commissioner, and it took 90 minutes to get there. 90 minutes to get there. Why? Because West Kendall's a great place to live, but, it was never planned. People didn't plan to make it a live, work, play area. We need to make this into a live, work, play area. You know who had a similar issue? Hawaii, right? So in Hawaii, in the island of Hawaii, because it's an island, they had a big traffic issue, which we have a big traffic issue, right? And the issue was everybody lived on one side of the island, but worked on the other side of the island, right? Which is Miami right now. Everybody lives in West Kendall, the Southwest, the West, and everybody works in the east, the north. Everybody's in a car at the same time every day going this way and coming that way. And public transportation is a hassle and unreliable because there's no connectivity that's close by. When you go to a New York or a Boston or a Chicago, you take a train and in every freaking stop, there's something to do. That's what we need to create here. In order to create that, we need to create pockets and nodes of live, work, play. This is what we need to do with West Kendall and exactly what Honolulu did, what Hawaii did, right? They had a downtown on one area. They built a second downtown on the other side of the island and balanced out the traffic because now the people that lived here can work here and play here. Now, let's just be clear. I'm not talking about putting, 20-story buildings in West Kendall. Like, we're not going to freaking do that. That's not going to happen, right? But we need an explosion in manufacturing, an explosion in work, play right here in this area to balance out that traffic. And it's not only West Kendall, but it's all of the South and the West.
And I agree with you. It's the thing is with West Kendall, it's that it's already at the border, right? You have the urban development boundary line. So when building a live, work, play, would that require that boundary line to be expanded further out west to accommodate that type of density that we're looking at? Because that's going to be a lot of manufacturing coming here. That's a lot of people, families.
So
where they going to live?
The cool thing is that there's a lot of land out in that area, right? So there's a lot of land in that area, but also, right, before you even look at the UDB to expand out there and not to encroach on the environment, there's something called urban expansion area. And there's plenty of urban expansion area all throughout. And this is like scientifically and environmentally where you build should you have to build. Does that make sense?
So these are already approved by, the researchers that they can actually build there, right? Environmentalists, they can build.
There's like a whole opinion, and we can get you a copy of the opinion if you want. I mean, it's public record, but there's a whole, opinion and report on the urban expansion area, right? But even then, right, there's plenty of land out there to start doing these things. What we don't need, in my humble opinion, is to build 5,000 single-family homes or 5,000 apartment buildings, right? We can't afford to do that right now. We do have to solve the housing issue, but we can't be irresponsible about it, right? If you just put 1,000 apartment buildings out in West Kendall, you create more of that traffic. Does that make sense? Because you create more people just living here and having to work in other places, right?
Yeah.
You need to balance that out before you even think about doing it.
And then
and I'm sorry, once you do that, now you can create the connectivity because you could take the bus, the rail, the train to your job. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's connectivity. That's how you solve transportation.
So you touched on affordability, and I think that's a massive issue that we're facing here in across the country, but in Miami-Dade specifically.
Yeah, there's like no middle class anymore, bro.
No, think about it. There's people who have a family and none of the kids can leave and they're in their 30s and they have to stay with their parents, right? And they're all trying to pay for the rent or the mortgage that they're living in. Does Miami-Dade County have a plan, I don't know, to increase more supply, or is there a way to, because it's difficult, right? There's a supply.
And you know what, dude, look, I don't want to get political. I don't want to get too political, but all of this started, right, nationwide during the Clinton administration. Right. And that's why I think that it is brilliant to come up with, this initiative to bring manufacturing back to this country. Right. Regardless of what you think about Donald Trump. Right. What he's doing with the tariffs believe me, mark my words, is going to bring manufacturing back to this country, right? And that's where we lost the middle class. As a matter of fact, you just had Governor Whitmer, right, who is a staunch Democrat, right, testifying in the White House saying, hey, tariffs is a good idea because Michigan needs manufacturing, right? I mean, if you remember Detroit, Michigan, dude, they used to manufacture every freaking car in America there, right? It was a community that survived off that manufacturing, right? So when Clinton and the NAFTA deal and a whole bunch of things start happening, all of these jobs go overseas. And it turns out, dude, that like we're doing this, right, to benefit other countries, and we're being hit every time we send something to these countries. So look, to not have to elaborate and get into like a political conversation, I think that that's exactly what manufacturing is going to do. And that's exactly what I'm talking about with bringing these jobs here. When you bring these jobs here, you allow the middle class to come back, right? There used to be a time in this country, like I remember when my parents first got here, right? You can work a 9-to-5 job, right? You can raise your kids, they can go to college, you can freaking make it. You name me, how many families do you know where both parents don't work?
And those two parents have like 3 jobs. Like that's the reality.
Saying, man, we've lost touch with what it is to give opportunity to the working class, to the middle class, the backbone of this country. And so by creating this work and play and bringing this manufacturing and being ahead of what the next level of technology is in aerospace and space, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. And that's exactly what I think that we want to do as a commission, is bring these jobs here and get, for lack of a better word, dude, bring the rebirth of the middle class to Miami.
So basically, to like solve this problem, tackle it, it's more of a wage problem, because people opportunity. So they have more income, they can live a higher quality of life, and I see that, right? Because the median income here in Miami-Dade, I think is like $75,000. But $75,000, you're tight. Like, what can you really afford to do here?
And I mean, add 2 kids to that, right? Add a mortgage to that, or a $5,000 rent for a 2-room apartment. You get what I'm saying?
So I did a poll recently, and I asked the community, how much you need to make to live in Miami comfortably? And everybody was pretty much in the camp of, you need to be making minimum $200,000 household to survive and to live, not lavishly, but to live okay and decent in Miami-Dade.
It's just become, it's really pushed out the middle class. And I think that, this presidential administration is doing a good job at creating the environment to bring that middle class back. But I think us as local leaders, what we need to do is open the doors to bring those opportunities right to our residents' doors. Another good initiative that I think, I know the governor's been pushing it, I know the legislator and the Senate has been, talking about it as well, is the property tax issue. So down here in Miami-Dade County, with Keone McGee, I'm proposing a resolution to study how we can eliminate property taxes in Miami-Dade, right? But aside from that, at the very minimum, I think we should eliminate property taxes for veterans and for, anybody over 60, right? Like, imagine you buy your house, right? You live here for 30 years. You own your house. And now you're potentially, because you're on Social Security, right? Because you're retired and you've earned the right to retire, you're running the risk of losing your house because you can't pay the property taxes on it. So it poses the question, I mean, do you really own your house?
No, you don't own anything.
Right.
But then how do you make up that deficit within the budget? So if we remove the property taxes on people that are 60 or retired, where is that money going to come from? Will sales tax go up, or?
So I think that's a great question, because that's really what's needed in order to figure out if this decision could be made, right? But so this is not the first time that this happens, right? So the first time that property taxes were thought of to be eliminated was, it was with Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio is now the Secretary of State. But Marco Rubio was the Speaker of the House right here in Florida. When he was Speaker of the House in the mid-2000s, he had proposed to eliminate property tax. And at the time, what his ideal was to implement a minimal sales tax. Now, that sales tax was going to be capped on certain items. So I think it was like items over $150 or $200 at the time. And then there was a study that showed that, it would be viable, right? So I think what the legislator and what the governor are doing now is they're studying where do we poke the holes. But aside from that, I think that government needs to shrink, dude. You get what I'm saying? Government needs to do what is necessary, right? Not all of these extras. And what do I mean by that, right? We're seeing this initiative all throughout the country with Doge, right? And I'm currently working with Florida Doge. And what we need to do is cut the fat from government. You know, there's a lot of money that's being wasted that shouldn't be wasted. And if we learn to be efficient with government and provide those necessities, right, we're going to make it so that we can minimize that budget. I'll give you a perfect example, right? You know, you have a home, right? And you're making X amount of dollars. What's the first thing you pay? You got to pay your mortgage. You got to pay your gas. You got to pay your food, everything. You got to pay your insurance. You got to pay your food. If you have money left over, you can go pop bottles and live, right? But if you don't,
put it on a credit card.
You probably shouldn't do that, right? So what has government been doing? They've been popping a lot of bottles. And then, bro, we got to pay the rent, dude. Let's raise taxes. No, man, that's unacceptable. That's unacceptable.
So then how do we improve government efficiency? And then how does AI play into all of this? Is this something that's being thought out? Because you're talking about massive growth that's going to come into South Florida specifically. How do we control this? How do we know what's going to, what are the areas that are going to need, more government intervention? And I guess, how's AI, if anything, going to even play into this?
Okay, so a lot of different ways to answer that. I don't want to divulge too much, but I am currently working with Florida Doge, and the head of Florida Doge is a gentleman by the name of Eric, who used to be in DC and was working with Elon and with National Doge. Governor DeSantis has brought him to Florida in order to create all that efficiency, and they're using AI technology along with some of the greatest auditors that you can ever freaking imagine. I mean, these guys are the coolest nerds in the world. Okay. And they're diving into a lot of these budgets, right? And I can't say too much about what I'm doing, but I am working directly with Eric and his team. I think you're going to be happy real soon, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people need to know what's going on, right? At least have more transparency where the money is coming from, where it's being pulled, because a lot of people don't know where the taxpayer money is going to, right? I think that's really cool if we can build some type of transparency or some portal where people can go and see, hey, like, where's the money going to?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And you know what? Like, I feel like that's what it's all about. And that's why I feel people need to be involved in the political process. It does need to be transparent. People need to be involved. People need to voice their opinion. And the more that people pay attention, the less likely that you're going to have, bad people doing bad things in government. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, for example, I feel like for a long time, people had this notion that government's really freaking difficult, right? And I think you had some politicians that wanted you to think that, right? And then on a national level, you saw a lot of folks that went into Congress and went into the Senate and have been there for 40, 50 years. And what have they really accomplished for us, right? What have they accomplished for the American people? Not a lot, bro. As a matter of fact, a lot of them have sold out our country, right? And, now that you have, someone who comes from the private sector, right, and who understands that, a country is like a company, the county is like a company, the county is like a $12 billion company, right, with thousands of employees. How do you make it efficient? Well, that's the real question. And you need somebody who understands how to run a company and how to produce, right, in order to do that. It's not difficult, dude. It's not difficult.
And okay, with AI, I'm assuming going to start rolling out soon because it's everywhere, right? A lot of people are using it on a daily basis. This is something our kids are going to start growing up into. They're already touching it every day. How can we avoid artificial intelligence? How do I say this? Being a little bit discriminatory, or maybe they're, remove those inefficiencies, because sometimes AI may not work 100%, like what we saw with like those bus tickets that were going on here in Miami-Dade, where I think they were using artificial intelligence or the camera system, to give tickets for people, and it was just those gray areas. How do you envision that? Or I don't know if you guys are even thinking about working through that. I'm just thinking about it out loud right now.
Bro, look, I think we need to promote initiatives for for innovation, right? I think we need to promote innovation as much as possible, right? I think AI is at its beginning stages right now, and a lot of people think AI is very advanced. And although we've advanced a lot, it's still in its beginning infant stages, right? And I think it's only going to get better and better and better. And I think that there will be some bumps along the road, but just like anything, I mean, dude, like I remember a time where everybody had beepers. I remember Nokia phones, bro. I mean, you're probably too young for that, but I remember Nokia phones. I remember flip phones, right? And slowly but surely you started seeing how technology started catching up. And I think that although it hasn't caught up completely yet, I think very soon we're going to be able to use AI at a whole nother level.
And do you think that we can start? So government efficiency is fantastic. Now I want to transfer over to a big problem that's happening right now in condominiums. It's what's happening there. It's
devastating.
It's devastating, and it's nuts to even think about that. There was so little oversight over these association board members, what they were doing, how money was being allocated. I was just at a press conference that Ron DeSantis held, and they're passing laws right now to help these people who are struggling with these assessment increases and new reserves and all this. What are going to be some accountability measures that are going to be in place, if any, this year or whatever policy you may have on the pipeline, but to really tackle those bad actors that are in those association boards that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing? Is there going to be some type of task force? Because when I was there at that conference, they were talking about DBPR having oversight, but it's just too many. There's thousands of associations. How are we going to get people's voices heard, or what's the best way to go about it?
So, it's funny that you say that, because let's talk about HOAs, right? So about 2 years ago, I led the charge with trying to figure out how we can regulate HOAs, because we have, in my district, we have the hammocks, and the hammocks was part of a huge...
It's a great one.
That it was a part of a huge fraud ring that, State Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rondo really went in there and was able to prosecute a lot of those folks. But in that prosecution, right, I spoke to the state attorney and she told me, what we really need in order to tackle this is criminality, right? There's no teeth in legislation right now. And so it was very difficult to put charges on folks that were stealing money or committing fraud, right? And so we went to Tallahassee and we talked to a lot of legislators. And let me just say, there's a lot of legislators up there, the Speaker of the House, a lot of people up there that really want to do good, right? And so we went up there, we talked to a lot of people, and unfortunately, the bill that was passed, what it did is instead of giving the criminality, it created a regulatory board with DBPR, and DBPR was going to regulate HOAs, right? Unfortunately, that didn't work, right? Because the NPR has a lot on their plate, right? Yeah. And so what I did in Miami-Dade County is I passed a resolution that made a point of contact in Miami-Dade PD in order to take any and every HOA call. Prior to that, it was going to economic crimes. So, you can think, a lot of people were calling because of HOA fraud, going to economic crimes, and then,
a lot of runaround,
right? And we need to avoid that as much as possible. So I had a point person in MDPD to take those calls. That person was able to dig through those calls and figure out what was fraud and what was not, and hand it over to the state attorney's office. Now, the state attorney is brilliant, right? So Catherine Fernandez-Rondo, we worked together, and she created a task force, right, of state attorneys to prosecute bad actors. Right? That was the biggest deterrent. And you saw a lot of the fraud and a lot of, the stealing and the corruption go down. But not only was the task force geared towards the criminality, right? But what she also did is that a lot of times it's not fraud. It's just like a civil matter where, it's a bad actor, but it's not criminal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening is that she was able to create a group of lawyers with the Cuban Bar Association that would take a lot of these civil cases pro bono. Well, when that happened, the legislators started looking at what we were doing in Miami-Dade. And then this year, a new legislation has been proposed, and I think it will pass. And what that legislation is going to do, and I am in full support of, and I've talked to the sheriff about it, what it basically does is it takes the money that was allocated towards DBPR and he gives it to the sheriff who has arrest powers. And now the sheriff will be able to regulate these people. But you got to understand, dude, for many years, these associations had multi-million-dollar budgets and nobody was looking at what they were doing. The assessments is the same thing. For many years, they had to keep these assessments and nobody was looking into what these people were doing. And so, you know, it's like you leave a bad kid in a candy shop and then, you know, you get upset when he eats all the candy, right?
Oh, yeah. And my fear is, this is great, right? Like all the laws are happening. I think this is fantastic, and it should have been done decades ago. Mm-hmm. But now we're in this like crossroad, right? Like a lot of condo owners are in this point where there's fear that they're not going to be able to sell. The assessments are going up. They're going to lose their homes. And this could probably maybe trigger some type of, you know, real estate pullback, a correction in the Miami market. Do you think that this is something that could potentially happen? Is there a way that we can help these people, especially the elderly ones? 'Cause I feel like they're the ones that, you know, they lived in their homes for...
Yeah, it's unacceptable. I mean,
Think about that.
Imagine living in Miami, right? And you've worked your entire life, right, to buy an apartment. You bought the apartment. You lived in this condo for over 30 years, right? And now you're retired and, you know, you're going to lose your condo and nobody will buy it because there was never any oversight and there was never any reserves, right? I think something needs to be done. I think something's going to be done, bro. I'm very hopeful. I know the governor is very, very serious about getting this done. I think the legislator is going to work with the governor, and I think the senator is going to work with the governor, and I think something's going to be done. I think what has been done so far is probably not enough, but I have full faith in our legislator, full faith in our Senate, and I know the governor has a great initiative to try to do something, right? I mean, look, we can't just pay for everything, right? Because that's not fair either, right?
Yeah.
But something needs to be done so that these folks don't lose their home, because that's, in my humble opinion, I don't think that's acceptable.
Yeah, because then you run into the issue where they can't afford it. The state is probably going to... So it's like a catch-22, right? I think the state can get really involved or they can't, but they have like all this liability that I'm sure they want to like step away from. Then the only person that would buy it, if these people cannot sell it, would have to be like a developer. They'll have to come in and redevelop that. So I don't know. I'm just like thinking out here, like let's say that scenario were to play out. I don't know if there's any way to help these people, if to move them to a different unit. I don't know, because it's going to get really tough here. And I hope that something happens pretty soon for these guys, you know? And I want to go back real quick to what you were saying about Miami-Dade County, the sheriff. Is that already in place where they can reach out to them?
Yeah, man. So there's a new sheriff in town. Her name is Rosie Cordero Studs. She's doing an amazing job. As a matter of fact, this week she had her first 100-day speech. It was phenomenal. I was there. She gave a great speech, and she's doing a great job, man. She's doing a great job. And I think the constitutional offices are great, right? Because you've been able to separate these from the mayor's power and given them to actual elected officials who are now going to answer to, you know, the people. Right. So I think that that's great. But I also think that it's going to mean a lot of things for our budget, because this year our budget has to take into account the money that needs to be allocated to these constitutional offices, including the sheriff, which goes back to necessities. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We need to concentrate on doing those things that are necessary, like public safety, for example. That's really necessary. Roads, parks. You get what I'm saying? Garbage. Your garbage needs to be picked up, right? There's no reason why we should be raising our taxes when we're doing extras, right? Let's stop doing extras. Let's do what the necessary things are. That's why I'm one of the only county commissioners that has voted against raising fees for picking up trash. Bro, picking up trash is literally our job. Like, that's what the county does. It picks up your trash. It keeps you safe. It makes sure that the roads are acceptable. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And are safe to travel on and don't have these holes in them, right?
Yeah.
And it maintains our parks and our libraries. I mean, dude, like, I feel like this is a no-brainer. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. Concentrate on the necessities. Then, if you have extra, go pop bottles and live.
I think everybody's popping bottles that live on a credit card, but they can't afford their rent. You know? It's the Miami way.
Yeah, but we cannot have that in government, right? We can't have that in government, brother. And I think the future looks bright, and I think that there's going to be accountability brought to Miami-Dade County. And I'm telling you that I am I'm working really hard to bring it, bro.
No, I see you're out there, you're grinding. I see you doing a lot of positive things for the community. So.
We also have a really good team, right? Like the new chairman of the county commission, Anthony Rodriguez, is a Republican, and he's focused on making sure that we solve a lot of these issues, right? So there's a whole committee that is focused on a Doge perspective for the county. There's a whole called the Appropriation Committee that's literally looking into the books and into the line items to make sure that there's no government waste, right? So I think you're going to see things change here really, really quickly. Not to mention that we got the Doge card, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you think that? Do you think, all right, the state of Florida is going to implement the Doge program. Miami-Dade possibly is going to have something like that on the horizon. I'm assuming other counties across here.
No. I am working directly with the head of Doge Florida. I am working directly.
You're working directly with them.
Directly with Eric.
Then this leads into the question: do you think we're going to see a lot of layoffs with government jobs here in Florida?
Look, man, I don't know. Right? But I think that what does need to be done is we need to figure out how to make things efficient, right? And if perhaps or if two people are doing the same job, we don't split, the workload for one person between two people, right? That can happen. But if we can produce efficiencies, then maybe there are some people that can be used in other departments. Maybe there are some people that can do other tasks, right? But we shouldn't just be paying people to do the same job. Does that make sense?
100%. I've seen it when you go do permits or do different things. There's people doing like the same roles.
We need to run the county like a $12 billion corporation, right? But the biggest thing is that, a CEO needs to produce cash flow. You need to produce for the company. That is the way that you need to run government. How can I produce efficiently for my shareholders? You would say. It's all of the residents of Miami-Dade County. So how can I make this the biggest, baddest, most productive company, giving an ample return to all of the residents of Miami-Dade County? And sometimes it takes something drastic. Like, for example, when Jeb Bush was governor, you know what he did? He went in and he fired everybody. Sometimes that needs to happen, bro. I'm not saying that people are not doing a good job, right? But sometimes you need to go in, you need to clean house, allow people to reapply for their jobs, and figure out how to make those jobs efficient. You see what I'm saying? 100%. Because look, man, a lot of times, just like in every other company, right? Like morale is very important, right? And I can tell you what I've seen in the county. We have some of the greatest people working in Miami-Dade County, right? As a matter of fact, like when you come into my office and you talk to my team, you're talking to people that love Miami-Dade, right? You're talking to people that will take a pay cut to make a difference. And there's only three types of people that work in government, right? The first type of person will take a pay cut to change the world. And I know that sounds cliche, but I promise you that that's the type of people you have in government. The second type of person is somebody who's like, okay, because their mommy or their uncle or somebody that they know is a somebody, they need to make $150,000 a year and they don't have to do anything. That is discouraging, because what happens is that the third type of person is a young person that comes into a government job and wants to change the world, but their boss is the second person, right? And it discourages them, and then there's no initiative. They don't want to, produce, because what's the point?
No incentive.
Right? If you're promoting people that aren't doing anything, right? And I'm not saying that that's happening all throughout the county.
But it happens.
Right? And it starts with leadership, and it starts with morale. Steve Jobs, when he was alive, he used to say, and I say this to my team all the time, A players want to play with A players. If you have one C player, you're going to ruin the entire team, because the team is going to look at the C player, have to pick up their slack. And if you make the C player a captain, then why am I working so hard? You see what I'm saying?
100%.
You need to develop that leadership mentality, right? Kind of like Pat Riley and the Miami Heat, right? Like, you know how Mr. Butler
No, he's firm.
Yeah, and good for him, you know. But at the same time, dude, listen, if you're not willing to grind and if you're not willing to work as hard as everybody on this team, then Papo, maybe you shouldn't be here.
100%.
Right?
So where do you see, this will be the final question, where do you see the biggest opportunity coming to Miami-Dade? And then what do you think the next 10 years are going to look like here?
Brother, Miami-Dade County is now the major metropolitan area in the world. Notice I did not say the United States, in the entire world. We are the new New York, we're the new Dubai, we're the new Chicago, right? We're the center of the effing universe, man. We need to start acting like it. And I think that in the next 10 years, you're going to see a bright light on exactly what Miami-Dade initiatives are coming out. So, you know, the next 10 years need good leadership, right? And the mayor is termed out, and I think we're gonna get a really good mayor that comes in and understands that we need to look at the future, right? And if we look at the future and if we plan for the future, we're going to lead the way. I think we're already doing it, right? You have all these companies and all these major just initiatives that are looking at Miami and saying, I want to go to Miami, right? Now we need to start acting like we are the major metropolitan area that we are.
100%. Rob, if you want to talk one more, if there's one more thing you have on your mind, I don't know if there's anything you want to leave off with the audience, this is your chance to do it.
Yeah. So here's what I would tell the audience, right? You need to get involved in local politics. I don't care if you agree with me. I don't care if you don't agree with me. You have a voice. Unless you get involved in local politics, you are not going to see the initiatives that you want done for your life and for your county. Everybody's really concerned with who the president is, and that is very, very important. But your local politics affects you way more than any other level of government, and you need to get involved. You need to go to county commission meetings. You need to understand what's going on. That's why people like you, right, that are out here trying to give people a voice and just, presenting to people like, look, man, this is what's going on in the community is very freaking important. I admire the fact that you do that a lot, man.
Oh, thank you.
Because it's really important. And people at home, sometimes these things don't seem interesting, right? But they are interesting because they're affecting your pocket. They're affecting your future, and they're going to affect your kids. Speak up. Come to the county commission meetings. Call your county commissioners. Call the mayors. And most important, run for office. Run for office, man. Anybody could do it. I'm telling you, I am living proof, man. If you work hard, you can make a change, right? But you have to want to do it.
You got to work hard. Local politics is number one, more important than federal. And Commissioner Rob, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Brother.
Thank you.